Awesome. So we are now live. Good evening and welcome to everyone who has tuned in to tonight's webinar. My name is Christopher Lyle. I'm the Education and Advocacy Director here at Wolf Park. And I am really excited to welcome Laura, Joe, and Morgan from Conservation Dogs Collective to Wolf Park's virtual platform. In our opinion here at Wolf Park, there is literally no better collaboration and partnership than between Wolf Park and Conservation Dogs Collective. Because of all of the intersections between non-invasive research, conservation, canids, positive reinforcement training, and so much more. So we're really excited to dive into the world of conservation dogs tonight. And we are also really excited because it is our 50th anniversary today here at Wolf Park. So, you know, it's the streamers behind us. And we are actually going to close out the program tonight before the Q&A with a really special announcement for an exciting opportunity that has resulted from this partnership between Wolf Park and Conservation Dogs Collective for you all to potentially come learn even more about conservation dogs. So again, stay tuned to the end of tonight's program so you can learn about that opportunity. Before we get started, I want to note that we will have a Q&A period at the end of tonight's program. So throughout the program, please type your questions in our Q&A box rather than the chat box. That's going to help me keep track of all of our questions later on and not miss anything. We are also recording this webinar and it will be on Wolf Park's YouTube channel either tonight or tomorrow morning. And the webinar is also being live streamed on Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook or even if you're watching on Zoom, feel free to go on over to Facebook and share this with anybody who you think would be interested in learning about conservation dogs. With that being said, I'm now going to turn over the virtual mic to Laura.
All right, thank you, Christopher. Hello, everybody. On behalf of the CDCI family, we're really happy that you're here with us tonight watching live. And also those of you who are going to watch at your own convenience, at your own time zone. Special thanks for Christopher and his team for inviting us to do this webinar and all the other crazy ideas that we have for our partnership. We are going to start off quickly with a poll that Christopher has prepared for us. We're just interested in a little bit about you, aside from where you're joining us from. I know the folks on Facebook won't be able to really punch the buttons here, but Christopher, if you can cue up the poll. We're just wondering, you know, what your interest in conservation dogs is. We're always really eager to learn more about everybody, you know, whether you just heard of conservation dogs or if you're a professional dog trainer or a biologist or something else. So folks on Facebook, go ahead and just maybe type a comment into, we're really curious to learn about you too. We're getting what I expected, a nice variation across the board here, newbies to scent detection, some folks with experience in scent work. We got some professional biologists, ecologists, land managers, and a good chunk of other. I'm really interested in that other. Excellent.
All right, so okay. It looks like most people have participated. So I'm going to end poll and share the results. So those of you on Zoom can see. Are you guys seeing that, Laura?
I can see it, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I recommend everybody, if you don't have water, grab some water. We're going to kick it off and get into our presentation component of the evening. And here we go. We are sharing screens. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to CDCI's presentation all about conservation dogs. My name is Laura Holder and I am the Executive Director of Conservation Dogs Collective. In addition, I am the proud canine keeper to finders Ernie and Betty White. In this presentation, the CDCI team is going to review what exactly a conservation dog is, what type of projects they work on, and the different considerations for utilizing a conservation dog on projects. But first, let me give you a quick history of CDCI. CDCI is a nonprofit organization based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin that was founded in 2017 under our original name of Midwest Conservation Dogs. As of 2022, The CDCI team consists of 8 finders, that's the name for our doggos, 5 keepers, they're humans, and several staff members, board members, and volunteers from all over the United States and around the world. We provide professionally trained finder-keeper teams that lend a hand and a highly capable nose for conservation scent detection projects. Speaking of our superheroes, here they are. Meet the cute noses and happy faces of the CDCI Finder Squad. Spanning across 3 different states and ranging in ages from 1 to 9 years old, each of our finders is a unique little individual. They have varying experiences and really different search styles, and they really make an incredible team. And honestly, CDCI wouldn't be here without them. Be sure to check out their doggy bios on our website. In this presentation, you'll hear from 3 of our canine keepers. That's me on the left with Finder Ernie. And then you're going to hear from Joe Locke in the middle. That's Finder Willow. And then Morgan Charpentier with Finder Jessie. So let's get sniffing. Let's sit back and settle into our chairs with a quick little trivia. Approximately how many scent receptors do dogs have? More than 14 billion? More than 200 million? Exactly 150,000? Or less than 450? If you answered more than 200 million, you are 100% correct. Well done. So let's talk about first what exactly a conservation dog is. Conservation dogs are highly trained scent detection dogs that locate anything of interest and value for conservation efforts. At the time of this recording, there is no industry-wide certifications yet, but they are considered working dogs. These doggos work hard, play hard, and protect the planet with every sniff they take. The use of conservation dogs dates back to the 1890s. On record, New Zealand was the first country to utilize dogs to benefit conservation. These highly trained dog handler teams successfully helped protect native species, primarily birds, but also helped keep the island free of pests, including rodents. In the past few decades, the use of conservation detection dogs has expanded greatly. In the United States, the most popular use of conservation dogs in the early days was to locate animal scats as well as aquatic invasive species such as the zebra and quagga mussel on watercraft to help mitigate any spread of this invasive. The use of conservation dogs is still in its infancy. We are just discovering and untapping the talents of these sniffing superstars. However, to date they have been used to locate live or dead animals, plants, evidence of animals such as various body parts and scats and carcasses, bacteria, diseases and fungi, and even contaminants. In the next section, Joe is going to take a deeper dive into the incredible ways dogs can help in conservation.
Hello, my name is Joe, and I am the keeper for Finders Willow and Holly. Dogs use their noses to support conservation work in a myriad of ways. They can sniff out invasive plants or endangered and elusive animals. They help with data collection through scat or carcass surveys, and they have joined the fight against illegal wildlife trafficking. They even help to protect our food supplies by detecting diseases and parasites. Let's dive deeper into the many ways dogs can help our scientists to protect our flora and fauna. Plant and animal species across the world are declining at unprecedented levels, and the rate of extinctions is accelerating. This loss of biodiversity is gravely concerning because our health, our food supplies and our livelihoods all depend upon the stability of our ecosystems. Dogs can help to slow down this loss by locating endangered and threatened species so that they can be studied, understood and protected. Many of these projects involve dogs sniffing out and locating live animals, but sometimes dogs are trained on something other than the animal, such as scat or nesting materials, as is the case with the endangered rusty-patched bumblebee seen in this picture. There are dogs all over the world working to protect rare species. Examples from Australia include Maya, the koala-sniffing canine, and Rubble, the border collie who finds the endangered bawbaw frog, while canines Samson and Ali track rare salamanders in New Mexico, and canine Hera sniffs out the critically endangered crow-plain grasshopper in the south of France. When it comes to collecting data for conservation studies, dogs offer a unique approach that is less invasive than some other methods. If collecting data is a primary goal of a project, dogs are generally trained to find some type of sign that indicates the presence of the animal rather than the animal itself. For example, dogs can be trained to find scat, a fancy name for poop. And one of the most exciting scat projects in the world involves dogs who stand on the bow of a boat and locate whale scat floating on the surface of the ocean. While finding whale poo is pretty incredible, many other capable canines are trained to find hair, skins, dens, or nest materials. Another common data collection application is dogs who conduct post-construction surveys at wind farms, finding bird and bat carcasses to monitor the effects of energy production on wildlife. Two of our finders, Willow and Jessie, have spent several seasons working at wind farms in the Midwest. One of the biggest threats to natural habitats are non-native species of plants and animals that get unintentionally introduced to new areas by human activity and then spread rapidly, often killing or outcompeting the native species, reducing biodiversity and damaging the ecosystem. Unfortunately, invasive species often reach levels where they are causing significant problems before steps are taken to control them. Conservation dogs can help slow down the spread of invasives by detecting their presence early enough for experts to take action to push back their spread. In the western states, dogs inspect boats for the invasive quagga and zebra mussels that have already taken over many of the Great Lakes region and eastern waterways. Two of our keepers have completed watercraft inspection certificates, and 4 of our finders have been trained to detect another nasty aquatic invasive, the New Zealand mud snail. Dogs can also work in partnership with human searchers to restore areas that have been taken over by invasive plants. In this situation, the dogs typically come in after most of the bigger plants have been removed, and they find any remaining small plants that are hard to visually detect. Finder Ernie can detect the tiny rosettes of the invasive wild parsnip before they get a chance to flower and spread their seeds. When proposed developments such as new roads, bridges or housing threaten territory occupied by populations of a protected species, dogs can be brought in to locate individuals so that ecologists can move them to safety. The dog in these pictures is called Rocky, and in 2016 he spent a week checking the 12-mile route of a planned bypass near Norwich in the UK for the endangered great-crested newt. As the effects of climate change ramp up, many species will find themselves under increasing pressure to shift their ranges, but be unable to do so due to the fragmentation of habitats. Conservationists have already begun discussing the possibility of using managed relocation as a method to preserve such species, and dogs may be able to assist with this process. Around the world, dogs have been trained to assist law enforcement, customs and conservation officers in preventing the illegal trade of endangered species at borders and airports by detecting concealed animals and harvested body parts, such as pangolin, tiger skins, live turtles and ivory. Dogs have also been trained to find firearms and ammunition and are helping rangers in national parks and preserves to catch poachers and track illegal hunters. A number of dogs have been trained to protect our food supplies by detecting viruses, bacteria, parasites and pests to prevent the spread of harmful organisms to plants and animals. Mac the bee dog inspects apiaries for the Department of Agriculture in Maryland, protecting the honeybees from the bacterial disease American foul brood. In California, dogs have been trained to detect the fungal pathogen that causes wilt disease in avocado and the bacterium that causes canker disease in citrus, plum and peach trees. While in Canada, Chili the Belgian Shepherd patrols greenhouses seeking out the invasive pepper weevil. When the environment becomes polluted, it can adversely impact wildlife, vegetation, water sources, and human health. Dogs can help with the environmental cleanup process by sniffing out contaminants such as oil spills, sewage leaks, and industrial chemicals. In Seattle, a dog named Jasper searches urban areas for traces of PCBs, a highly toxic group of compounds that are invisible and odorless to most humans. PCB production has been banned for decades, but can still pose a serious health risk because they do not break down quickly and are still present in some places. In Denmark, canine Louis sniffs out chlorinated solvents in natural and built environments that have been improperly disposed of and are leaking into the soil and groundwater. That was a lot of information to absorb, so let's take a quick break. True or false? A dog's wet nose helps them scent better. It is of course true. Wet noses work better than dry ones because tiny scent particles stick better to damp surfaces. Not every conservation project is appropriate for detection dogs, as Laura will explain later. However, for the right projects, there are many advantages to using dogs. The first major advantage is that, compared to humans, dogs have sniffing superpowers. Just like dogs, humans can detect odours when volatile molecules are released into the atmosphere and bind to special scent receptors in the nose, causing the smell to be perceived by the brain. However, dogs have over 200 million of these olfactory receptors in their noses, compared to only 6 million in ours, making their sense of smell between 10,000 and 100,000 times more powerful. Dogs' noses also function differently to ours because when they inhale, a fold of tissue splits the airflow so that some goes to the lungs for respiration, while some is channeled to a recessed area at the back of the nose that contains a maze of cartilage lined with cells that sift through the odour molecules. When humans exhale through our nose, the air goes out the same way it came in, so no new odours can be taken in until the next breath. A dog, however, sends spent air out through slits in the sides of the nose, which allows them to sniff more or less continuously. Not only that, but dogs can also tell which nostril a smell first entered through, which helps them to determine the direction the smell is coming from. Anyone who has hiked with a dog knows what Olympic athletes they are. Conservation projects take place in a variety of locations, all with different terrain, weather and vegetation. When carefully selected and matched with the conditions, a dog's physical abilities and athleticism often allows them to cover search areas more effectively, thoroughly and safely than human searchers. Dogs can cover larger areas much faster and search for multiple species simultaneously, making them many times more efficient. Some targets are also hard to tell apart from other species visually, so dogs can be more accurate compared to human searchers, increasing the size and quality of the data sets collected. Depending on the project, dogs can also be a less invasive method, causing minimal disturbance to vegetation and wildlife, and their speed and efficiency make them a far more cost-effective choice compared to some other methods. I'm now going to pass the baton to Morgan, who is going to tell you all about how we select dogs to do conservation work.
My name is Morgan, and I'm the keeper for Finder Jessie. Let's kick this off with a bit of trivia. True or false, any dog can be a conservation dog? If you answered false, you're correct. While any dog can be trained to do almost anything, not every dog is suitable for conservation work. Let's explore why. You may have noticed our Finder crews look consistent. This isn't just a coincidence. We typically work with dogs between 2 and 10 years old, but it depends on the dog and the environment we're working in. This can mean that younger or older dogs are working lower impact scenarios for their safety. Size is another area where middle of the road is more desirable than the extreme. Small dogs are at an increased risk for catastrophic injury, and very large dogs present practical issues when it comes to vehicle space and travel accommodations. In general, CDCI looks for canine finders who are between 35 and 70 pounds. Temperament and personality are just as important as physical traits. Some traits we value are a desire to bond with a handler, confidence in unpredictable and unfamiliar environments, and a general comfort around people and other animals. The dog's opinion is important too. We always try to match up the dog's natural search abilities and preferences with our projects. For example, a dog with a natural knack for working large scent cones will do its best on a project with wide open spaces to search. Other dogs are much more detail-oriented and excel on projects that require more meticulous sniffing. In addition, breed tendencies, while not a guarantee, can help when selecting an appropriate partner for conservation detection. Depending on the project, breed selection can complement project goals. For example, many herding breeds have been selected to have a strong desire to work alongside people and are known for their whip-smart brains. These are great all-purpose dogs that are usually enthusiastic about any job you're willing to give them. Most breeds in the sporting group have been selectively bred to have a strong desire to hunt, but an inhibited portion of the predatory sequence that influences the dog's desire to kill. In fact, many of these breeds have been selected to have a soft mouth, meaning that if they do bite, the odds of them biting very hard are greatly reduced. Tenacious terriers are the opposite. These breeds can be great for some pest monitoring projects, especially those that involve invasive rodent eradication, or projects that do not involve wildlife at all, like searching for plants or scat. However, keepers would need to use extreme caution if they're searching for live wildlife because terriers are more likely to have the biting and killing portion of the predatory sequence intact. A different breed may be a safer choice for these projects. It's not just about the dog, though. The finder-keeper relationship is huge. Our keepers are experts at getting to know their finders and building a relationship based on trust, understanding, and kindness. Our keepers have years of hands-on applied experience in dog training and are constantly assessing and implementing reward-based training techniques to keep their partners motivated to learn and perform at their best. Are you ready for another round of trivia? How many scents can a conservation dog be trained to detect? If you answered more than 15, you are correct. Dogs live in a world of scent. Their brains are made for processing odor. So far, research has not found an upper limit to the number of odors a dog can be trained to detect, and some research indicates that training multiple odors may actually increase performance overall. Let's look at some example projects. In 2019, we started our pollinator program and quickly narrowed our focus to bumblebees. Bumblebees are critical pollinators suffering from major population decline. It's easy to see bees when they're just bumbling around, but it can be incredibly difficult to locate their nest. Because of this, there is a lack of information on bumblebee habitat preferences. Dogs can help locate nests, which helps researchers fill in information gaps. When we have a better understanding of bumblebee habitat preferences, resources can be better allocated to support bumblebee populations. Rather than spending time and money on conservation efforts that may not be truly effective, dogs can gather data that can be used to pinpoint effective conservation strategies, often in real time. Two of our teams have trained to find two species of turtles, the eastern box turtle and the wood turtle. Turtle populations are also in decline because of nest predation, the pet industry, and roadway fatalities. Because of this, it is critical that turtle habitats are restored and protected in order to support the turtles that remain. Monitoring known turtles is a critical part of their conservation plan. In order to understand their habitat needs, we must understand their range and nesting habits. Turtles are notoriously tricky to find because they are often underground, underwater, or hanging out in leaf litter, which offers the perfect camouflage, but they are rarely ever just out in the open. Once turtles have been fitted with a tracker, they are much easier to monitor. However, someone needs to find them first. Dogs are the perfect partners for this job. As our turtle detection program continues to evolve, we are looking for new ways to optimize our survey methods, including detecting nest sites directly. Now Laura will take over to talk about when conservation dogs may not be the best choice for a project and things you can do to maximize success when considering a conservation dog.
Those are just a few quick examples of projects the CDCI Finder Keeper teams have worked on that elevate the power of a canine's nose to advance conservation efforts. Pretty cool, right? Be sure to check out our website for more projects that our finders are working on. And if you want to dive in super deep, sniff out Annegret Grimsay-Farth's database of over 1,400 research papers on the use of conservation dogs. If you Google Detection Dogs in Nature Conservation, a database on their worldwide deployment with a review on breeds used and their performance compared to other methods, you should find the database. While we're always eager to utilize the amazing olfactory capabilities of our finders, let's talk about a few situations where they may not be the best choice for projects. As the old saying goes, sometimes poop just happens. If you must alter a study design to accommodate the use of a conservation dog, chances are it may not be the best choice. Another consideration is when a dog may not be suitable for the working environment. This is the case easily when you're working in extreme weather conditions or on extremely rugged terrain. The safety and the welfare of the dog and the human should always be considered a top priority. Finally, you need to consider the interaction between a conservation dog and the wildlife present in the environment. Anytime wildlife will be put at risk by the presence of the dog, or even the human, other methods should be considered first. Also, on the flip side, if wildlife poses a risk to the conservation dog and/or the human, additional measures should be taken to assess whether or not that is the appropriate method for the project. All right, now let's get down to it. With all that said, there are certainly countless sniffertunities for a conservation dog team to elevate a dog's sniffing superpowers to help with conservation projects. At CDCI, it is always our mission to ensure maximum success with every project we touch. Let's get into some of the considerations that help ensure positive outcomes when utilizing a conservation dog team. First things first. Collaborating with all project stakeholders to define a study design with clear and realistic goals for all parties involved is critical to the success of a program. This should always include an open conversation about the capabilities a conservation dog team reasonably brings to the table compared to existing methods that have been tried. Oftentimes, a multi-pronged approach with complementary methods will offer greater success rates for overall project goals. In addition, we recommend working with local communities, citizen science groups, universities, and additional stakeholders whenever possible. An all hands-on-deck approach will help spread the workload, but more importantly, will allow for key project insights that can positively impact the work you're involved with. Next up, as Morgan discussed earlier, not all doggos are created equal. During the project setup phase, be sure to identify which finder-keeper teams are best suited to tackle the project goals as well. In addition, you might want to consider the species-specific habitat that you're going to be conducting searches in and which dogs might be best suited for that. Once the teams have been identified, then it's time to get training. This is always one of the most exciting parts about working on a project. You get to work with your doggo. Obtaining training samples can be one of the most challenging parts of getting started on a project, however. So start early in the process to obtain your training materials. Whether the species is an invasive one or an endangered one, get as many accurate training samples with as much variation as humanly possible. Speaking of training, allowing ample time for quality training of the team is something you need to outline and discuss early on. If it's a new project, sometimes this will take a few months, maybe, even a year. Other times, it might just take a few weeks. During your training, be sure to include time to test in fieldwork conditions whenever possible. Enlisting the help of a training partner or mentor to set up blind trials for you is going to be invaluable to your dog's learning. After all, we don't want them learning that it's the scent of you plus whatever the species is. Further to this point, be sure to capitalize on every opportunity you can to do in-situ training. This is often a challenge to do, but if you enroll your community and citizen science groups early on, sometimes they can be the best asset you have to allow for in-situ training. And they really do love to help the dogs. Another consideration that we don't love to talk about, but it's very important, is identifying what data collection needs to be done. What are the goals, metrics, and outcomes that need to be measured for the project? Figure out what data entry methods you'll be using early on, including software or whatever other logging methods you need to use. And finally, stay flexible. Even with the best planning, things rarely go 100% according to plan, but that is where the learning lies. Honor the feedback and data you're gathering during dog training and field deployment, and be sure to continue learning from others in the industry. Many are generous to share what they are learning all the time, and there's research coming out every single month on the use of conservation dogs. On behalf of the entire team at Conservation Dogs Collective, I sincerely thank you for your time and attention, and for taking an interest in the exciting, growing world of conservation detection dogs. I hope you are inspired to take action and continue to connect with us on social media. You're also welcome to email us anytime with questions, queries, or collaborative ideas. We absolutely love connecting with the community and consider each of you listening as part of the CDCI family. Be sure to sign up for our Nosy newsletter. Take a snap of that QR code there to get updates on our field work, learn about upcoming events, and be entered to win some wag-tastic giveaways. As a thank you for joining the list, you'll even receive a free sticker. Thank you again for your time. Stay positive and keep in touch. Okay, Christopher. I'm going to stop.
That was so great. Thank you, Laura, Morgan, and Joe.
You bet. I'm going to try to pop up that last connecting with the screen there, at least for another minute or so. We should have added a trivia to this, like how many puns do you think are going to be thrown out in a webinar?
Well, you know, Wolf Park loves puns, so we appreciated all of them. We appreciate all three of you helping put that together and help teach our audience more about conservation dogs. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, it is Wolf Park's 50th anniversary. So we are actually going to be celebrating by popping some champagne on our end. Our executive director is here, Kara Rawlings, to celebrate with us. This is a great way to spend our birthday, is learning about conservation dogs. Yeah, we'll hopefully not spray any technology involved. Woo!
Happy birthday, Wolf Park.
Happy birthday. So those of you at home, if you want to pop a bottle of champagne, if you have one, or open a drink, whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic, thank you, Kara, and our Wolf Park mugs. Help us celebrate at home. If you are local to the area here in Indiana, you can join us for our 50th birthday celebration this Saturday from 3:30 to 8. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have birthday present deliveries for all of our ambassador animals. We'll have food trucks, music with a band. We have our Hound Night program included in those tickets as well. So I hope to see some of you on Saturday. And then, as I also mentioned at the beginning of the program, we have a really special opportunity that we want to share with you all listening first and foremost. This partnership between Wolf Park and Conservation Dogs Collective has generated into a seminar that we're going to be having at Wolf Park later this year on November 12th. It is called Sniff, Stay, Learn, Discover, and Dive into the Exciting World of Conservation Detection Dogs. I'm going to be sharing the link to that seminar momentarily in the chat box if you are on Zoom. If you are on Facebook and you're watching this, I'm going to share my email, and you can email me if you want the link, because for just a week only, there is a early bird special. So you'll receive a discount with registration. in a week, it is going to be open to the public. So just for this week, it is open to those of you that tuned in to this webinar. Next week, it is going to be open for public registration, and that early bird discount will be going away. So go ahead and register. Come to Wolf Park in Indiana on November 12th. It's going to be a lot of fun. Laura, is there anything you want to add to that, or Morgan or Joe?
Yeah, I would say there's going to be dogs there. So if nothing else, come visit and meet the finders. We have limited spots available as well, just to ensure maximum learning. So I think 40 spots are going to be available to those. And anybody that needs CEUs from the CCPT, the Karen Pryor Academy, and the IAABC, we have been approved for CEUs as well. So double bang for your buck that way.
Absolutely. And we're hoping to host you all out here several times, potentially before that seminar, so your finders can practice on our 75 acres of property that we have up here. We actually have 75 acres on our main property with bison pastures that will be full of distractions for your finders. And our wolf enclosures, we have enough wolf enclosures that we usually have at least 10 empty wolf enclosures. So lots of good spaces for finders to practice and get good distractions. And then we have a 27-acre piece of conservation property right down the road as well that we're turning into a wildlife habitat through some restoration. So lots of open land for your finders to come out here and work with your keepers to hopefully hone in their skills a little bit more. So it's going to be really cool on November 12th, getting to see some of that in action. So again, highly encourage you come out for that. I am going to share the link for that in the chat right now for anybody that wants to go register. There it goes. I'm seeing a question now. Would it be possible to record this event and have people join online for a fee? We are working on getting a different kind of sound system and recording system in our conference center. So that is a possibility. We will look into that after that gets developed, but we have had and hosted a lot of virtual programs at Wolf Park, so that may be a possibility. Once we go outside, our connection is not quite as good, and we're going to have some live demos. So we'll see if that could work for people that are remote or cannot join us here in person. So I just sent out the link to the seminar and the chat. I'm going to go post my email and the Facebook, and then we'll get started into Q&A. So again, if you're watching on Facebook, shoot me an email and I will send you the link to that seminar if you want to get in on the early bird special. All right, we ready to get started into some Q&A? Awesome. Let's see, let's start sorting through some of these. Okay, so first question up. Although dogs can be trained up to 15 cents, how many projects are they on at any one time? And typically, how long are they on any given project?
Who wants to answer? Morgan, this was in your section for trivia.
Oh, was it? Okay. I think at any given time, dogs are probably on one project. There might be some exceptions there, but overall, it's one at a time. And then, what was the second part of this question? I am so sorry.
No worries. Let me go back. How long are they on any given project at one time?
That question can be answered. I'm sure we're all annoyed by this answer, but it depends. It depends on the project. It depends on the species. If it's a plant, you know, those stick around all year. They just go through a life cycle. Animal, usually they leave in the winter. So we're just busy in the summer when they're around.
Gotcha, thank you. And
I'll add to that answer.
Sure.
So yeah, mostly one at a time, the projects. They can be on more than one project at a time. So one year I had two projects that I was running simultaneously, but obviously I wasn't out in the field doing both things at the same time. But you can be. So you know, you can train a dog to find several species, and they can, you know, in one search be looking for more than one odor. And with wind farm work, for example, they were looking for several species of bat and all the species of bird. So you can train for several things simultaneously.
Okay, and then I'm going to also add to that, because that's what happens when you get all of the keepers together. The duration of projects, it definitely depends. I also want to add in there are some projects that are like definitely longer term programs, like our bumblebee nest detection project. But we also get asked a lot of times from our partners, like, can a dog detect, insert whatever species here. So sometimes we undergo more of a shorter term pilot study as well. So just wanted to add that little flavor.
Great. I love all of the answers from all of you combined. That makes it much more well-rounded. It's great to hear from all of you. We have another question. How are your finders found and brought into the organization? And similarly, what kind of background do the keepers need to have?
Well, our finders are dogs that we have to live with. They live in our homes with us. So we find our finders based on our own personal preferences. Some of us have dogs that have come from like rescues or shelters, and other people have dogs that come from breeders. It's less about where they come from and more about how much do they want to work with us? How excited are they to do the work? So I'll leave it to Laura to talk about qualifications.
And I will be very specific with our dogs. Our dearest Harriet and Alva, her keeper's not with us. Harriet's actually got a dental today. She had a dental cleaning today. But both of them were dogs that were pulled from some pretty undesirable situations, and they kind of flourished in detection tasks. So their keeper, Clarice, she kind of raised them, one of them from a puppy, but the other, Harriet, was a street dog in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. As far as the keeper side of the equation is concerned, all the business people on the call will probably be like, oh boy. I really enjoy bringing on keepers that are naturally curious people. Obviously having some kind of education in learning theory, applied dog training, an interest in a really heavy interest in positive reinforcement training are key qualifications that I look for when we bring someone into our team. Someone that's got brilliant ideas and, really does have the finder's welfare in mind, but also the overall welfare of the industry and really promoting the integrity of the growing industry and the species that we're working with. So that's a really cliff note version, but those are the key qualifications that we look for keepers.
And the answer for the dogs from me is, so Willow, who's snoring behind me here, she was bred by us and was born in my house. And Holly down here, I found from a breeder. So, it kind of depends where the dogs come from. We have lots of different preferences and different sources.
And all three of you have dogs behind you, right? Yeah, I see one behind Morgan. Yeah. Some behind Joe. Laura, I heard yours earlier.
Yeah, Ernie is carrying around his bowl right now. It's his nightly ritual. So you might make an appearance later.
Very cute. So this kind of ties into our next question. Can a citizen with a dog that's a good fit for conservation detection work join an organization like CDC or others?
Okay. I would say possibly. And the reason I'm saying possibly without a guaranteed yes or no is I think everybody on the CDCI team that's here with us tonight can agree that getting some kind of mentorship in place and experience with scent detection in some capacity, whether that's canine nose work, search and rescue, or other modalities, getting that experience and also having a mentor there to see your handling ability, the dog scenting ability, and then also the team dynamic is something that really needs to be evaluated with some keen eyes that have been around the block for a while. So while we love to engage with everybody, we also don't like guaranteeing that like every dog is, perfect for this work, because it's just not true. I mean, we work in some pretty challenging conditions for both the dog and the humans, like bushwhacking, like mosquitoes everywhere, and then pulling ticks off your dog. And obviously some of the terrain that we're in is pretty nasty. But I do want to communicate the positivity behind the message too. Like, there is a lot of work to be done out there in conservation detection tasks. So getting connected with us, send us an email, send whoever else you might be, thinking of an email, just to start the conversation and see where you might be a fit. And if it's not with your dog, there's plenty of other ways to become involved and support this type of work.
Awesome. And we have a question. What is the best way to train a dog for conservation work? Do you want to touch on that a little bit? Obviously, a lot of positive reinforcement training. But anything else you want to touch on with that?
Oh, Joe, I see it in your face.
Gosh, that's such a big question. Well, there's lots of different ways to train any behavior. But search isn't one behavior. It's a very complex chain of behaviors, and it's built upon very solid foundations. So the foundation behaviors kind of take much longer than the actual search stuff sometimes, which is why I tend to prefer having puppies, so that I can spend a year or so getting a relationship with that dog. So yeah, that isn't a very easy question to answer in like 5 minutes, really. But the search sequence itself, if you want to simplify it down, when the dog first starts, when you first release the dog to search, they're looking for the odor. So they're first seeking the odor. Once they perceive the odor, then they've got to track that down to its strongest source. And then the most important part of the sequence really is to tell you about that find in some way, so that you can recognize that they found what they're looking for. So it's kind of a chain of behaviors, and you need to train each of those things separately. The dogs have, already got innate and natural abilities to actually do the seeking part. That's usually the easiest thing, but you've got to teach them to find things that sometimes that they're not, naturally predisposed to find. I mean, dogs will seek out things like scat and decomposing things, usually naturally, but endangered plants, they normally wouldn't have any interest in those. So you have to generate an interest in that odor by conditioning it, by pairing it with something that they do actually like or want. So I don't know if that helps, but that's some of the elements that you need to put in there to train it.
I'm totally going to add a little bit of a cheeky response, but a very honest one on top of that. The best way to train a conservation dog is to train a really solid conservation dog handler or keeper. And like Joe said, there's a lot of different behaviors. Like, there's beyond the searching stuff, there's emergency recall cues, emergency downs, directionals, like traveling in a car quietly and happily, and all sorts of other stuff. You just gave us another idea for a webinar with that question, anonymous attendee.
I'm going to
amazing. We can host webinars all the time with you all.
I'm going to add a little more to that. I like what Laura said about the best way to train a conservation dog is to find a really competent handler. And it's true, especially in conservation, because there's not really one formula that applies to every type of search. Every search is different with different needs and requirements. So having the knowledge in place as the handler to adjust your training formula to meet the needs of the project is hugely important. So there's no one answer of this is how we do it, because there's a million ways we do it.
That is a great answer, and it ties into another question about keepers. This one, I don't know if you have opinions on this or not. This might get a little dicey. Do you prefer bringing on a biologist and teaching them about the dogs and dog training, or bringing on dog trainers and teaching them about the science and data of conservation work?
Go ahead, Morgan.
I think that this is a dicey question, like you said, because there's a lot of opinions here. Personally, I feel like a lot of times biologists are the ones approaching us with these projects. So they bring that knowledge with them. They don't necessarily have the knowledge on the dog side. So it's very important that we bring that knowledge to the table. And then we can combine and plan together. So personally, I feel like dog experience is very important, but I do feel like some sort of science background is important to fortify what we offer, just in terms of like data integrity, professionalism, knowledge. But overall, for me, I find the dog experience to be the most helpful thing when I'm out searching.
I agree with that. As an organization, the way that CDCI is set up is we are a hired service that goes out and assists researchers and scientists, land managers with their projects. So for us, it definitely makes more sense for, another pun. Okay. Makes more sense for us to be the dog experts, like the finder keeper team experts that are providing a service. And we absolutely learn as much as we need to make sure that we're doing the best job possible. For some organizations, having an on-staff, biologist with a trained dog makes 100% sense. But still having that fluency and, understanding of what does a dog look like when he's sniffing the target odor versus just sniffing, a non-target odor, or like, oh my gosh, my dog's off today. They're missing whatever, the scent cone and all that. That just comes with a lot of repetition, just like any kind of professional athlete.
Makes perfect sense. Joe, do you have anything to add to that one?
No, I think the other two covered that great. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. So we have several more questions. Someone said, you mentioned checking with local colleges and universities to check on projects. Do you recommend starting with the biology or ecology departments to see what's out there? I don't really know if this is for someone wanting to join a project or interested in just learning more.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the context of the question. So maybe, Nanette, if you could add a little bit more, if maybe she can unmute herself or add additional commentary there.
Add a little bit more to the Q&A.
If she's asking about how do you find projects to work on, then there's lots of different potential sources of projects. There could be universities and colleges. It could also be, environmental groups and conservation groups. Sometimes preserves and different, habitat restoration projects. So yeah, there's a few different sources where projects could come from.
And it looks like the question was added to just meaning for general questions, even not including a dog. Not quite sure about that, but I'm assuming going to any kind of ecology, biology department is going to give you some good answers. If you're searching any answers for conservation work, biology and ecology is generally where to start. We also have some more questions to get into. Oh, for like citizen science type projects. Question was added, Hunter, again. So for citizen science, I think there's a lot of different resources for that. I think there's several websites even. Do you all know those off the top of your head if you're wanting to get involved in citizen science?
Oh gosh, I'm really fluent and current in the bumblebee stuff just because that's my life right now. So there's like Bumblebee Watch, there is the Bumblebee Brigade, and Bumblebee Brigade's out of Wisconsin in particular. So, I mean, here's my advice. I'll be like, go to Google, say like citizen science, insert species, and like really kick back, some specificity to what that might be. Larger community citizen science stuff, you have iNaturalists, which is a really great one. That's a nationwide, might even be worldwide by now. Joe and Morgan, I know like birds, the Cornell bird app that's out there, that's a really great citizen science way to contribute data. Morgan, Joe, I can see the wheels turning. There's so many.
I mean, there's things like the Wildlife Federation and the native plant societies. Every state has native plant societies that have projects going. There's the invasives. There's usually quite often you find it. I think the acronym is SISMA. I can't remember what it stands for, but there's there's native invasive plant action groups in most counties and states. Fish and Wildlife Service. Lots of different places and resources that you can go to.
The Department of Natural Resources and stuff usually has a lot of statewide resources available that can help point direction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much out there. I know just kind of in relation to what we do at Wolf Park, we have gray foxes represented as one of our ambassador species at Wolf Park. And their numbers have dropped quite a bit in Indiana, enough for them to be considered a threatened species in the state. And so Indiana's DNR has put out a request for any citizens that spot a gray fox to let them know where they saw it, how many, some general information. There's also been some recent call outs for information about wild turkeys, I believe. So yeah, looking at your state's wildlife agency, wherever state you live in, it's going to be a different name of that agency. And then just Googling, as Laura said, you're bound to find something to join. And we have a few more conservation dog questions, and then also a couple about your organization in general. I think the final conservation dog question is, are there detrimental effects to the dogs if their projects consist of finding toxic chemicals for long periods of time?
Intuitively, I would say yes, but also I think that the three of us are very careful about what kind of projects we put our dogs on. They're not free for hire for anything. We want our dogs to be safe. We want to be safe. Safety is really important.
I can give a little specific example of the wild parsnip rosette program that I was on several years ago. There, a question was, brought up that, people can obviously get third-degree burns from being exposed to the sap, and if they're exposed to sunlight within, I think it's 48 hours after that, it's crazy. The question came up, will the dogs be just as sensitive to it? So we consulted with the University of Wisconsin Veterinary School and also the extension program there to get any kind of information about animals' exposure to wild parsnip. And it turned out that they actually had studied cows eating wild parsnip and being exposed to that on their face. So that's just a hyper example of one of the things we do. We always consult with our veterinary team, before we go on any project, not only for the species that the dogs are detecting or the odors that the dogs are detecting, but also what other environmental hazards might be present in the environment.
Yeah, risk assessment's one of the main important things to do at the very start of a project. Another example of that is in the wind turbine surveys that we did. Those are mostly in crops, so you're searching fields that have usually cleared circles that are surrounded by corn or soy. So considerations there were pesticides and herbicide spraying, so you didn't search the plots that had just been sprayed, and if they used weed killer to try and knock back the weeds on the plots, there was protocols about how soon after that you could search it for safety for the dogs and things. So yeah, very important.
Great to know. So now transitioning more towards your organization itself. Are you a local organization only, or do you travel to different places? How does that work?
We are home based in the upper Midwest, but we do travel out for program work. So hit us up if you have an idea, if that's what you're asking. I'm in Wisconsin, Joe and Morgan are down in Indiana, and then we have, Clarice is in Wisconsin as well, and then Heather's up in the UP of Michigan. But we love traveling, and so do the dogs.
Great to know. And do you have volunteers, or are all of your keepers full-time staff? How does that work? We had a question about that too.
Yep, our keepers are staff members. Our work is highly seasonal right now, so a lot of times we're getting paid to be out there during the high peak parts of the year. And then during the off season, however, we do a lot of education outreach. So doing webinars, presentations, in-person demos. We're finally getting back to doing stuff like we are in November with you guys. So yeah.
Awesome. And I know you just said it's very seasonal, but we had a question about how many hours do the keepers and finders tend to put into a project, maybe on a weekly basis or overall?
Wait, that's another, trying to think of how to answer this. I would say, let's say for field work, so we're in season, like getting the dogs like ready to rock, and we're out there doing surveys with our doggos, anywhere from 30 to 45, maybe 50 hours. It just really depends, honestly. Like as the leader of the ship here, like I'm into a very healthy balance of, yes, we have to get out there when the weather is, ideal for the surveys that we're doing. So I really try to strike the balance with our teams and not stress out the dogs or the people. So we might put multiple finder keeper teams on a project to alleviate some of the overworking that can cause mental and physical exhaustion, and obviously performance declines when that happens. During maintenance part of training, so during the colder months in the year up here, we might be doing the same amount of hours, but 90% of that's office work, reporting, all that kind of fun stuff.
Gotcha. We love a good work-life balance for dogs and humans.
Mm-hmm.
Final question about your organization. Do you have any need for remote part-time volunteers? Or is there anything else people can do at home to help you?
Yeah, specifically, Margot, I thank you for that question. Send us a message. I would love to hear more about you and anybody else that's interested in volunteering. Like we have needs that we don't even know about, to be honest, besides the obvious things like spread the word about the method, share the work that we're doing and the other work that other conservation dog teams are doing. If you have the means, supporting the organization with a gift, directly impacts the ability for our canine finders to do a great job in the field. But, I think we're kind of bad at promoting ourselves sometimes in the special talents that you have. Like just, reach out to us, share what really makes your heart sing, and we should be able to find something for you to help with.
Awesome. That is great to hear. I hope you get some good volunteer inquiries and other support coming your way. I would like to close out by hearing from each of you. What is your least favorite part about detection dog work? And also, what is your favorite part about the work that you do with your dogs?
My favorite part of detection dog work is dogs. That's a really easy question. That's the bottom line. I get to spend time with my dogs all day. I get to keep them happy. They're really fulfilled. It's awesome. I think my least favorite part of detection dog work is sometimes the culture around working dogs is not always healthy for the people or the dogs. And it can be really hard and mentally exhausting to just be around that all the time. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that with CDCI. CDCI is awesome. We are all like, stay positive all the time. But when you're around others, it kind of can wear down on you a lot really quickly.
I think I'm the same as Morgan. My favorite part is working with my dog. I mean, there's nothing quite like it when you've got that kind of communication partnership with another species, and you're communicating with each other. There's nothing quite like that buzz, really. And then the least favorite part, I guess, sometimes the weather and the terrain and the exhaustion, and the bugs and that can kind of can all add up to you thinking questioning your life choices, but not very often, thankfully. So.
Okay, can I say two things that I love about the work? Because one is obviously working with the dogs, and specifically like when the dogs find the target that you've trained them on, the very first time they find a wild version of that, like it's like a freaking birthday party every single time. The other part for me is honestly like the incredible team and support that has been kind of cultured and grown with CDCI and some of the other organizations. So having the professional network to brainstorm, you know, because we're not always able to predict everything that's going to happen in the field. And we have training struggles, just like you do with any species. So having the ability to really have a trusted network of people around to navigate together through any kind of challenges that arise, I think is absolutely fantastic. My least favorite part about the job, I'm not gonna lie, I hate data entry, but I'm getting better at it. It's just something, I went to school for like art and stuff. So like any kind of data entry, I'm like, oh God. But I have a team that helps me stay motivated through that as well. And then for the field work, as like just having to be, you know, at mercy of the weather. I know we can't change that, but that's one thing where you're like, I'm ready to go now. And then the weather's like, no, you're not. No, you know, for 5 days or whatever in a row. So it's the least favorite part for me.
Very understandable. Well, thank you, Laura, Morgan, and Joe for joining us tonight. I think we've gotten through all of our questions now. It has been so good to hear about your organization, the work that you do. It is just phenomenal what you all do with your conservation dogs. And we are so excited to have you back out at Wolf Park soon with your finders. And I hope to see some of the webinar participants in November on site. Again, be sure to follow that link to do that early bird special for the November webinar. You're going to be getting that link via email as well. And the follow-up email that Zoom automatically sends you. So look out for that, and be sure to follow Conservation Dog Collective on their social media. Reach out to them if you're interested in volunteering, whether in person or remote. And you can always give a monetary donation as well to support the work that they do. That is always going to go a long way for nonprofits, especially conservation nonprofits. So thank you all for tuning in. And thank you to Conservation Dogs Collective for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, everybody.